Welcome to Hard Road Theater's Stage at Home radio serials, where we step back in time and bring you stories and tales from the golden age of radio. Tonight, we bring you Father Knows Best, a half-hour visit with your neighbors, the Andersons, brought to you by Vickery Chiropractic. Vickery Chiropractic Clinic treats people of all ages in the rehabilitation and relief of joint, muscle, and nerve pain. Located at 806 Broadway right here in Highland, you can contact them on Facebook or by calling 618-654-4451. That's 618-654-4451. Extensive research has proved conclusively that there are two kinds of husbands. One, the husband who takes absolutely no interest whatsoever in household affairs. And two, the husband whose wife wishes he'd mind his own business and just leave things alone. In Springfield, in the white frame house on Maple Street, Jim Anderson is about to demonstrate that there is no happy medium. Like this.
6 goes into 36 6 times. 6 goes into 42 7 times.
Kathy, why don't you stop that? You know Mother has a headache.
But I have to learn my 6 goes intos.
Margaret, could I have another cup of coffee, please?
Of course, dear. Bud, stop banging your feet on the table.
I wasn't banging on my feet, Mom. I was just... Holy cow! Look at the time! I gotta go. Come on, Squirt.
Stop pulling me.
See you later, everybody.
Bud, don't slam the door.
Did you call me, Dad?
Never mind.
Okay.
Mother, why don't you lie down for a while? I'll take care of the dishes.
That's very sweet, Betty, but it isn't necessary.
All right. I'll come right home in case you need me for anything.
All right, dear.
Goodbye, Father.
Goodbye, Betty. Your head's still aching, honey?
Oh, it's really nothing. Jim, I don't know why everyone makes such a fuss over a little headache. You'd think I was dying.
Margaret?
Yes, dear?
You know, you haven't been looking very well lately.
Well, that's a pleasant way to start the day. How to cheer up your wife in 6 easy lessons.
I don't mean you look that bad. I mean, you just look so tired.
Jim, dear, in 5 years I'll be 40. Then you can swap me out for 2 20s.
Margaret, I'm being very serious about this. If you want to treat it as a joke...
All right, dear. I'll try to be more respectful.
Oh, well, where was I?
You were telling me I look like an old hag.
Oh, well, that's not what I said at all.
I'm sorry. A young hag.
Margaret, I'm merely trying to be helpful. I think you know why you're tired, and I believe I have the answer to the whole problem.
You're going to shoot the children?
Well, that had occurred to me, but I think I have a better idea. What you need is a housekeeper.
Oh, Jim, don't be ridiculous.
I don't see anything ridiculous about it at all. The Gilroys have a housekeeper, and I sell 3 times as much insurance as he does.
It's not a question of how much insurance you sell. We don't need a housekeeper. And where would she sleep? Or haven't you thought of that?
Of course I've thought of that. She can sleep in the den in the rollaway bed.
Jim, I don't want a housekeeper.
Then, when people like the Edwards come over for dinner, there wouldn't be all that fuss and worry.
Jim?
Yes, dear?
Who were the Edwards?
Harry and Grace Edwards. You remember them, don't you? We met them at the Hathaways last week. He's the little stocky fellow with the red face. President of the Chamber of Commerce, remember?
And they're coming to dinner when?
Tomorrow night. I didn't tell you. I could have sworn it.
Jim, is there any connection between the Edwards and this sudden passion for a housekeeper?
Of course not. I just thought, well, you've been working so hard and you have a headache.
There isn't any reason for wanting to impress Mr. Edwards, is there? Or Mrs. Edwards?
Margaret, I just finished telling you the whole thing. Well, after all, Edwards is the head of the Chamber of Commerce, and there's an opening on the board that I...
And Bert Gilroy's trying to get it.
Well, the Edwards had dinner with the Gilroys.
And the Gilroys have a housekeeper, so you thought, if we blossomed forth with a housekeeper...
Margaret, being on the Chamber of Commerce is a very great honor, and I certainly think it's worth a small expenditure of time and energy.
Jim,
Yes, Margaret?
no housekeeper.
Well, if you'd only listen to me rather than flying off the handle...
I'm not flying off the handle. I'm merely telling you simply, quietly, and without emotion. No housekeeper.
Ah, there was an ad in the paper only last night.
No housekeeper.
All she wanted was $75 for the month, and she'll take complete charge.
No housekeeper.
She's courteous, efficient, energetic, loyal.
No.
A wonderful cook, neat as a pin, loves children. Margaret, why don't you give her a trial?
No.
Honey, this isn't something you can decide on the spur of the moment. Why don't you think it over?
All right. I can't see any harm in that.
Good. Well, I've got to go now. I'll call you right after lunch.
All right, dear. Oh, Jim, I've thought it over.
Margaret?
No housekeeper. Is that you, Jim?
Yes, dear, I'm home. Just put your things down there for a minute, Mrs. Collins.
Okay. Nice looking place, ain't it?
It's comfortable.
The children are all upstairs, and as soon as you're ready, we'll have... Oh, hello.
Hi.
Margaret, this is Mrs. Collins.
Oh, how do you do?
Well, to tell you the truth, I ain't doing so good. My feet are killing me, and I got a pain in my back that I wouldn't wish onto my first husband.
I see. Jim, will you come into the kitchen with me for a moment? I'd like to speak to you.
Hey, you got a piano. Ain't that nice? I always like a house where they got a piano. Shows culture. And if there's one thing I'm just nuts about, it's culture.
Well, just make yourself at home, Mrs. Collins. We'll only be a minute.
Oh, that's okay. You don't have to worry about me. I got plenty of time.
Jim Anderson.
Now, wait a minute, Margaret. I can explain the whole thing.
I don't want any explanations, and I don't want a housekeeper. I told you that this morning.
But, honey, I hired her last night. I thought you'd be very happy.
Oh, I am. I'm the happiest woman in the whole world, and I want you to get that person out of my house.
Oh, Angel, it isn't worth quarreling about. Nothing is.
I know, Jim, but our home's too small for a housekeeper. We don't need one.
Now, Margaret, Mrs. Collins can be a great help. Don't you see, Margaret? She's a diamond in the rough. Mrs. Collins is very competent. Why, in 1 year, she's worked for 9 of the best families in Springfield.
Only 9? She certainly gets around, doesn't she?
Well, they just didn't understand her. With a little training, she can be one of the best housekeepers in the whole town. She said so herself.
Jim, if we ever take a trip to New York, will you promise me one thing? Don't pay more than $50 for the Brooklyn Bridge.
Hey, ain't you two finished talking yet? It's getting late. I got to get dinner rolling.
Mrs. Collins, I've been talking to my husband.
Why don't you talk to him in the parlor? It's becoming dinner time, and I've got work to do. Hey, some kitchen.
Jim?
Well, all right, Margaret. Mrs. Collins, I'm awfully sorry, but we've decided that, well, after all, you really won't be comfortable sleeping in the den.
Oh, stop worrying about it, will ya? I got it all figured out. We can move. What's your boy's name?
You mean Bud?
Yeah, Bud. We can switch him into the den. I move into his room, and everybody's happy.
Well, it's not quite that simple, Mrs. Collins. I told my husband this morning that
Hey, wait a minute. When have you been eating breakfast?
Well, at 8 o'clock, but it really isn't going to make any difference because...
Well, from now on, breakfast is going to be at 7 o'clock.
Now, see here, Mrs. Collins.
Wait, Jim. This has become very interesting. What else, Mrs. Collins?
Well, I ain't nobody's personal maid, so everybody hangs up his own stuff. And if I find any pants hanging on the back of the chair, don't be surprised if I just chuck 'em out the window.
Well, don't look at me, Margaret. I don't leave my pants on the chair.
No? Go ahead, Mrs. Collins. I think I'm beginning to like this whole idea.
Well, I don't mind if you invite folks for dinner. Matter of fact, I like company. But I gotta have 48 hours notice.
That seems logical.
Wait a minute. What if it's impossible? What if somebody comes in from out of town?
Take 'em to a restaurant. There's lots of restaurants in Springfield.
Margaret, if you think I'm going to stand here
Jim, please. Mrs. Collins was talking.
Oh, that's okay. I finished anyway. Now, why don't you two kids just go inside and relax, and I'll start fixing up the food.
All right, Mrs. Collins. Come on, kid.
Margaret, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. If you think I'm going to let
Jim,
her...
you heard Mrs. Collins. We've got to go inside and relax.
That's right. Take it easy. I got everything under control.
Margaret, that woman's impossible.
Oh, I don't think so, dear. She's a diamond in the rough, remember?
Yeah, but how rough can you get? She wasn't acting anything like that when I talked to her last night.
Well, we'll try it for a while. That's what you want, isn't it?
Margaret, I'm going into the kitchen and fire her right now.
Why, Jim? That wouldn't be fair. She's worked for 9 of the finest families in Springfield, and with the Edwards coming to dinner.
Oh, she can't be around them.
Wasn't that the general idea? We've got to, impress Edwards. And unless I'm very much mistaken, they'll be impressed.
Oh, Margaret,
Hey, Jim,
Jim?
get the kids down. Soup's on.
Well, that was quite an about-face for Mother Anderson. If only Father would have talked to her first, there wouldn't have been any argument. And the way things are going, it doesn't look like she'll brook any arguments from Father. Do you know that Jim Anderson has never been late for work? Or that Margaret Anderson has never burned a roast? Or that the Anderson kids always know when it's time for bed? Do you know why? It's because they always know the correct time thanks to Vickery Hickory Clock. Vickery Hickory Clocks, high-style, precision-made Swiss timepieces crafted right here in Highland, Illinois. Vickery Hickory Clocks are perfectly and precisely aligned so they never need an adjustment. Perfect for the kitchen, the rumpus room, and even the bedroom. Vickery Hickory Clocks. It's the movement that counts every day of the year. The day has passed as days have a habit of doing, and once again it's dinner time in the white frame house on Maple Street. This time, however, it's a special dinner with company. The children are stashed away in the breakfast nook, and a uniformed housekeeper is there to wait on the table. We hear Mr. Edwards, president of the Springfield Chamber of Commerce.
In the last 4 years, Anderson, bank clearances in the greater Springfield area have increased a total of almost 9.2%. And that's progress.
It certainly is, Mr. Edwards. That's progress if I ever heard it.
Now, why don't you two stop quibbling and eat your soup?
Mrs. Collins, I think I smell something burning in the kitchen.
It's your imagination, dearie. Everything's all cooked. Say, Jim,
Yes, Mrs. Collins.
if it's all right, could I take off this funny-looking cap? I don't mind the uniform, but the cap's driving me nuts.
Mrs. Collins, why don't you wait in the kitchen until we call you?
I can't hear anything in the kitchen. What are you going to do, talk about me? Go ahead, I don't mind.
I think you'd better go into the kitchen.
Okay, if that's the way you want it. You finished, Mrs. Edwards?
Yes, thank you.
Look, dearie, if I was you, I'd lay off the bread. With a shape like yours, it's murder.
Really?
Mrs. Collins, will you please go into the kitchen?
Okay, I can take a hint. Yell if you want me.
I'm sorry, Mr. Edwards. You were saying something about progress.
Oh, yes, I was. Yes. I think the Chamber of Commerce feels that it's a contribution to the progress of Greater Springfield.
Never mind, I'll get it.
Keep right on, Mr. Edwards. That's very interesting.
What is?
Well, whatever you were going to say.
Hello? Oh, hello, Bessie. Go ahead, folks, it's for me. What's cooking, Bess?
Hasn't the weather been beautiful, Mrs. Edwards?
I haven't noticed, really. When you're as busy as I am, club work and charities.
Yes, indeed. Grace manages to keep herself pretty busy.
See you later.
It's getting so I have to make an appointment to see her myself.
You
Okay.
don't have any children, do you, Mr. Edwards?
No, I'm sorry to say Mrs. Edwards and I have never been blessed.
That was my cousin Bessie on the phone. She's just a scream.
I'm sure she must be, Mrs. Collins. And I believe we're ready for the next course.
She was just telling me.
Mrs. Collins, we're ready for the next course.
Okay, I heard you.
Mother, when I finish my dessert,
Kathy,
may I
you get
go
back
over-
inside where you belong. Can't you see we got company?
Yes, ma'am.
That's the trouble with kids nowadays. They don't know their place. Shove your plate over, will you, Jim?
I'll answer it, Mrs. Collins.
Now you stay right where you are. What do you think you're paying me for?
That's a reasonable question, isn't it, Jim?
Okay, I'm coming. Hello?
Yes, indeed. You get a couple of kids in the house and
Oh,
you're...
hello, Mickey.
Yes, indeed.
I did, huh? What did it pay? $15.40. Hey, that's all right. Now listen, put $5 down on Little Jeff in the 4th at Bay Meadows. Yeah, $5 to win. Okay, Mickey. I'll give you a growl tomorrow.
Wow. Mrs. Collins has an endless assortment of talent, hasn't she, Jim?
All right, Margaret. You don't have to rub it in.
Just a little gem my husband brought home for polishing.
Mrs. Anderson,
That's all right, isn't it? $15.40 for two? I sure can pick 'em, can't I? Any of you kids play the races?
Harry, I have an awful headache.
Yeah, I know, dear. The way I feel, a headache would be a relief.
Mrs. Collins, if nothing more important comes up in the next few minutes, could we please have some food?
Okay, but take it from me. You're skipping a good thing if you miss Little Jeff in the 4th tomorrow.
Mrs. Collins, if you don't hurry, we'll be ready to eat Little Jeff tonight.
Good, Jim. Okay, the roast beef is coming up.
Good night, Mrs. Anderson. It was a lovely evening. One I'll never forget.
Well, I'm sure of that.
Good night, Anderson, and, Mrs. Anderson, it was, good night.
Good night.
Good night, sir. We'll have to get together again real soon.
Yeah, indeed. Sometime soon. Good night.
Quiet, isn't it?
Margaret, I don't know what to say. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. I think that woman's insane.
No, dear. She's just, well, uninhibited. She likes to speak her mind.
What mind? She's got the brain of a half-witted hyena, and if she had at least a bit of decency, she'd give it back.
Jim.
What?
Did you see the look on Mrs. Edwards' face when Collins told her that she needed a new girdle?
Oh, that was nothing. You should have seen Edwards when she told him he could use one too.
Jim, I can't help it, but I think they're two of the stuffiest people I've ever met.
She told Edwards she said she...
Well, everybody's having a good time, huh? That's what I like. People laughing and enjoying themselves. You live longer that way.
Mrs. Collins, I'd like to speak to you if I may.
Talks nice, don't he? Go ahead, kid.
Thank you. Mrs. Collins, I'm not usually one to complain, but I...
Complain? Well, go right ahead. If you feel you got a beef coming, just spread it right out. That's the way it ought to be. Everything out in the open, all the cards right out there on the table.
Right. Now, Mrs. Collins...
No, I don't go for this stabbing in the back routine. You got any complaints? I want to hear 'em. It's your house. I'm working for you. And anything you don't like, all you got to do is just tell me.
How?
Jim, you'll wake the children.
You don't have to yell at me. Just talk and I'll listen.
Mrs. Collins, there are a great many things I could say, and a great many ways in which I could say them. But since all of the things I have to say and all the ways in which I could say them add up to one and the self-same thing, I say to you now from the very bottom of my heart, you are fired.
Jim, you know, in my whole life, that's the nicest way I ever got canned. Well, I got to go to bed.
Just a moment, Mrs. Collins. I'm afraid you don't understand. My husband fired you. You don't work here anymore.
I know, I ain't deaf, but I still got to go to sleep.
You will not sleep here, Mrs. Collins. We want you to go away. Now. You're discharged. You're the most discharged person we have ever had in this house. Now, will you please go pack up your things and get out?
Jim, I'm surprised at you. A smart man like you with a nice home and a nice family, you ought to know more about the law. You can't fire me. I got to have a week's notice.
I'm giving you a week's notice. I'll pay your wages for a whole week. Only please, go away.
But I like it here. It ain't just the wages, Jim. I'm supposed to get room and board.
I'll give you 2 weeks' wages.
I don't think so. You got a piano, and I can call my bookie on the phone, and it's like a vacation with pay.
Margaret?
Mrs. Collins, is there anything I can do to make sure?
Call me when breakfast is ready. Well, good night. I'll see you all in the morning, huh?
Margaret.
Yes, dear?
When they start giving out awards to the world's prized idiot, be sure to tell them about me.
Oh, Jim, darling, you're an idiot, but you'd never take any prize.
I certainly would.
Well, I won't argue, dear. After all, Father knows best.
Well, Father certainly plunged into that head over heels. Look how sorry he is. It just goes to show it always pays to look before you leap. This world is not so bad as some would like to make it, but whether good or whether bad depends upon how we take it. A week's gone by and we find Jim Anderson walking down a busy street in Springfield. The Chamber of Commerce is still dear to his heart, and he is not what you would call a particularly happy man. Like this.
Serves me right. That's what it does. Make a fool of myself in front of Edwards. Spoil my chances of getting on the board. Gosh, I wanted that spot on the Chamber of Commerce. The speeches I could have made. About important things, too. Why, I could have said things like, ladies and gentlemen, it's an established fact that everybody wants a different thing. A farm, a store, a college education for their children. Or maybe they just want to retire and go fishing. But there's one thing everybody wants. Security. And there's one way, one sure way, for each and every one of us to get it. Save for your independence. Buy United States savings bonds. That's what I could have told him. I could have said, buy bonds automatically if you can on the payroll savings plan. Or the bond-a-month plan at your bank. They're like cash on hand and they return you $4 for every $3 you invest. Buy United States savings bonds. Save for your independence. And start now. Then I could have said,
I say, Anderson.
oh, hello, Mr. Edwards. I didn't see you.
Hey, I thought if you weren't in a great hurry, we might take a little stroll together. A little matter has come up that I'd like to discuss with you.
Why, of course, Mr. Edwards. It'd be a very great pleasure.
You know, Anderson, we never did get down to the discussion of business at your house the other night.
Mr. Edwards, I wanted to explain about that. You see,
Tut, my boy. No need to explain. I understand completely. As you know, Anderson, there's a vacancy on the board of the Chamber of Commerce, and, well, it's yours if you want it.
If I want it. Mr. Edwards, of course I want it. And thank you very much.
It's nothing at all. But tell me, Mr. Anderson, that Mrs. Collins, is she still with you?
No, we finally got rid of her this morning.
That's too bad.
I don't think we could have taken it another day. She had the whole family waiting on her hand and foot all week.
I see. You wouldn't know how I could get in touch with her, do you?
Well, I might. I think she left a forwarding address with Margaret. But why?
Well, I don't want this to get around, Anderson.
Of course not. I won't say a word.
Well, I followed that bit of advice Mrs. Collins gave me about little Jeff. And I won $64.
That concludes tonight's presentation of Father Knows Best, brought to you by Vickery Chiropractic. Join us again next week for another episode starring Rob Bowman and Gentry Fifer as Jim and Margaret Anderson. The kids were played by Kenzie, Karlee, and Weston Holzinger. Hard Road Theater's stage-at-home radio serials is available on the Hard Road Theater's Facebook page, our website, www.hardroad.org, and as a podcast through your favorite podcast provider, Apple or Spotify. Thank you for joining us today. I'm your announcer, Bill Sullivan. Have a good day, and please, be safe.